say a proper hello in a second. If you don't know Roy, you will. He is both amongst my biggest supporter and my biggest, no, you got that wrong, love. And he's never shy about making sure I'm aware of when I get things wrong. So if there's anyone heckling, it's this man here. Are we live?
Yeah.
Live, okay, fantastic. Oh, this is so exciting. Was it February, I think, when I did my last talk? Hopefully I've not forgotten what to do. I think it's mainly talk and click, and we'll muddle through. But it is really lovely to see some new faces. Thank you so much, and I hope you're not disappointed. I try to do these monthly, but just due to my job, it's just been insane for the last few months, so I've not been able to. But now things are a lot calmer. Oh yeah, I'm going to stop throwing that about. I should be able to get back to doing them, hopefully monthly, if not every other month. But I'm definitely doing one in August, okay? So I know that much. So yes, and thank you. We've had some lovely donations. You know, as you know, we never charge for this, but any donations to the community centre are always so much appreciated. So thank you very much for your generosity tonight. So yes, tonight's talk about, there we go, tolls, tracks and waterways. I was on the radio the other month, and we were looking at kind of the infrastructure, these things that really supported, led to, caused Oldham to become the 19th century powerhouse that it did. And I find it absolutely fascinating. I've talked about cotton mills, I've talked about 19th century engineering firms, if there's a Stott or a Platt or a Lees, I've talked about them, but I've never looked at kind of the additional stuff. It's not just we're really good at cotton, or we've got lots of coal. The other things that contributed, so that's what tonight's about. But before I start, so that thing I was waving about, thanks to Roy, we've both now got, it's a copy of, I'm going to get this wrong and he'll correct me, but it was a map that was drawn up in 1842, published 1847, 1848.
48, yeah.
48. And it's amazing, so it's Oldham, but it comes down to Bardsley. And so if you want to have a look right at the end of the talk, you are more than welcome to. It's now my most treasured possession. Right at the bottom, there's Bardsley. And I was working out where my house would be, and it's got the coal mines and I can never say collieries. So please feel free. And Roy's also printed off, there's a 1795 map of Ashton and surrounding area. So I've not had a chance to have a proper look at this, but there'll be stuff of interest on there as well. So please do feel free at the end of the talk to have a look at those. Okay, right. So I was here on Wednesday. Yesterday we were doing the AGM, and I kept saying, any questions? If I say that tonight, please don't ask any. Because as always, if I know anything, it's in the talk. Anything else I probably don't know. Okay, so thank you very much. It is amazing to be back. I've been so giddy about doing this. So as I said, I've talked about Oldham in the Industrial Revolution many times, and tonight it's looking at the transport revolution that changed Oldham from what was a group of small hamlets and villages into a global powerhouse. So we had the turnpike roads, which made it easier to move goods overland, and then came canals, which allowed, much more transportation of huge loads of coal and cotton. And then we had the steam train, the railway connecting Oldham to Manchester and the rest of the world. The world was officially our oyster. And these transport links fed the town's development. They fed the growing cotton mills, and they turned Oldham into the biggest cotton spinning town on the planet, okay? And that's not hyperbole. And tonight is about exploring just how they did that. But, as always, I like to go as far back as I can. So we're actually going to start in the Stone Age, when they had none of these things. But I do like to go as far back as I can. And we know that what is now Oldham was inhabited in the can't say that word either, the Stone Age, Neolithic. I'm not a very good historian because I can't say so many of the words. And we know people were living, certainly, there's lots of evidence from Saddleworth, and there's evidence Stone Age implements have been found from Worth, obviously just up the road. And this, these date back 4,000 to 10,000 years ago when people were living in this area and clearly moving themselves about, moving goods about. But how were they doing it if they didn't have these? By foot. The wheel was invented in Mesopotamia. So many things came out of Mesopotamia, which is modern day Iraq. And the wheel was invented about 6,000 years ago. But our European cousins may have had the advantage of sitting down while getting from A to B, but our Oldham ancestors didn't have that luxury because the wheel didn't appear in Britain until about 3,000 years ago. This is the Must Farm wheel. It was found in Cambridgeshire, and this is the oldest and most complete example of a Bronze Age wheel so far found in Britain, and this is about 3,000 years old. So without wheels, there wasn't the need for roads, necessity being the mother of invention. And so day to day, people moved about in this area by foot. And we didn't have, obviously, streets and roads as we know them today. There were trackways, of course, through Oldham. Church Lane in the town centre is understood to be one of the ancient routes in and out of Oldham. And this diagram is by Oldham Council. It's really interesting. So it doesn't work on there. Here is Church Lane, just next to the church. But you can see, like the dotted shaded area, that is an ancient trackway going through Oldham, it was part of a route to Osterlands and then on to what is now Hay in Yorkshire. And I read a really interesting article about it online, in which it says archaeologists recognise Church Lane to predate the Romans and a road that is probably as old as human life in this corner of England. So it's very, very old. And as we're seeing, human life was happening in this corner of England as far back as the Stone Age. So how long have feet been stomping up and down Church Lane? Absolutely fascinating. And we know that they were stomping up and down during the Roman period. The Romans first arrived on these shores in 55 BC under Julius Caesar, but didn't stay to make friends and take over the country until 43 AD under Emperor Claudius. So they left in 410 AD. Now this talk is not a history of the Roman occupation of Britain, but I can do that if you're interested. Fascinating period. I promise I'll include Oldham. But while they were here, the Romans kind of famously built roads, lots of them, 10,000 miles of roads constructed under the Romans, because they needed the ability to get to and from their forts and their places of administration and, to conquer Britons who dared say, not sure about this. And they needed to move quickly and easily. And I say quickly and easily, it's all relative. Travelling in the Roman period from London to Manchester would take between 7 to 10 days, and if you're like a garrison of soldiers, it would take a lot longer. But at least the Romans had wheels, so they had carts and wagons. And locally, I don't know if any of you have been, but there was a Roman fort at Castleshaw. So this meant there was an important Roman road linking Manchester and Castleshaw. So this is the route of the Roman roads. And I just love how stereotypically straight, ignore this bit, but the Romans, they didn't mess about. They were like, there's a hill, we're going over it. Okay, straight line, that's what they liked. And so this is the route. So Manchester's down here, that's Castleshaw, they built this road. And archaeologists, they can't be 100% sure that this is the exact route, but they know there was a road linking Manchester and Castleshaw, and we know that the Romans went as straight as they could. Clearly where they couldn't, they would detour. But it is accepted that this is pretty much the original route. The original road was 13.5 miles in total, and obviously the original road has long disappeared. I mean, there will still be many feet under the ground, there will still be remnants of that original Roman road. But obviously the route disappeared as new roads, houses, areas were built. What we do know is The actual site of the physical road remains in only a few places, one of them being Honeywell Lane. So Honeywell Lane, directly underneath that is the original Roman road. Just what an amazing piece of history, literally. And if you're new, I always point in the wrong direction. I have lived here quite a while, but I'll be going, yes, so Honeywell Lane just up there, and then everyone will go, Kelly, it's that way. So I have no idea where I'm pointing, but you know, next time you're driving on that road, you are driving on a Roman road, the actual route of a Roman road, which I get very excited about. Okay, so that was a bit of how far back can I go. Clearly, many roads were built over the years, but I am going to leapfrog 1,325 years to the 18th century, okay? On to the turnpikes. So the history of turnpike roads in Oldham really is the start of the story of this small market town, this collection of villages transforming into that industrial powerhouse. These turnpikes opened up much better connections to Manchester, to Yorkshire. And before these turnpike roads, we had basically tracks that pack horses would trudge up and down. And of course, a pack horse can only carry so much, and if the roads aren't fantastic, you can only go so far at a time. And turnpike roads really were the missing link that allowed Oldham to transform. These roads assisted massively the boom in the coal mining in the area, and without these engineered roads, I honestly believe the Industrial Revolution would not have happened in Oldham. The development here of cotton mills started slowly in the 18th century. Before turnpikes, raw cotton arrived in Liverpool and had to be moved to Oldham's mills. Done by pack horse, this meant that, like I said, only small amounts of cotton could be transported at a time, but turnpike roads allowed much bigger horse-drawn carriages to carry much bigger bales on more journeys. The roads crucially connected Oldham to the finished goods market in Manchester. More cotton arriving meant more cotton to work with, more output, and above all, much more money. And that would kind of be a recurring thing. Oldham sits still on a very rich coal field, but this, it's heavy and it's difficult to move on those pack horses across what is steep and boggy terrain. More cotton mills needed more coal to keep them productive, especially when they moved from water power to steam power during the 1790s. And as with cotton transportation, if you're relying on small-scale wagons on these poor quality roads, only small amounts of coal are going from pit to factory. But the turnpikes allowed more coal to be moved more cheaply, and the mills and homes all over Oldham benefited from this. So when and where were these fabulous newfangled turnpike roads built? So the first major route to open was the Manchester to Osterlands route, which opened in 1735. So this map is from 1771. So if you see, this is the route in green. It's essentially the route that the modern A62 follows. It's been lengthened. This was turned into a toll road in 1839, so you had just over 100 years of using it for free before someone thought, that we can make some money out of this. Yeah, it always comes back to the money. So tolls were paid at a toll booth on Dodd Lane in Failsworth, and here is what it would have cost you to use. So depending on what you were driving and what you were transporting, so the cheapest was a horse or mule laden with coal, which would have cost half a penny at the toll. And the most expensive was a four-wheeled cart or wain. Now, I didn't know what a wain was. It is a specific type of large open wagon. Now I understand the name Wainwright. They make the wains. Every day is a school day. Brilliant. And so there were also toll booths on Manchester Road and Hollingwood, Huddersfield Road and at Mumps. And Mumps was historically the main collection point for toll payments. There was the Oldham to Ripondon Road that opened in 1798, and again the modern A672 follows that original route. And if you go through Denshire and then up to Saddleworth by the M62, you're following in the wheels of travellers for over 200 years. And turnpike roads, these were built by professional engineers. And one of the most famous, I've mentioned this chap in a previous talk, Blind Jack Metcalfe. And I always think he sounds more like a pirate than an engineer. Maybe he was, the record does not say. But he was an engineer, and he used drainage and solid foundations. So, I've got a photo of him. Well, a photo. He was born in 1717. I do not have a photo. I have an etching. There we go. So he was better known as Blind Jack of Knaresborough, and he was a legendary pioneer of road engineering. He lost his sight to smallpox at the age of 6, but he became one of the most prolific road builders of the Industrial Revolution, and he designed many of the routes through Oldham. It's like, was it Beethoven went deaf? Was it someone went deaf and still, composed all these wonderful, I just think it's absolutely fantastic. In 1767, mileposts along these routes became compulsory, and this is the thing, people do this, they go out and collect mileposts. I've seen them occasionally, but there's dedicated groups of people who go out collecting images of mileposts, and if I wasn't nerdy enough, I think I can increase my nerd points, because I think that's something I might quite like to do.
You can't.
I can't become more nerdy. Right. Watch me. I see your challenge. And so these helped coaches keep to schedules, allowed for more precise deliveries. And these new roads allowed heavy-wheeled wagons to replace slow pack horses. The pack horses are like, which was essential for transporting coal and raw cotton to the multiplying mills. And unlike the old parish system, so previously on the rubbish roads, locals were forced to do what was called statute labour. So it was unpaid. They had to, provide for the upkeep of the roads. But the trusts of these turnpike roads hired professional surveyors to make sure they were always in a fit state to handle that heavy industrial traffic. So, however, while these roads were such an important contributor to the growth of Oldham during the 19th century, the arrival of railways in the mid-19th century took away the lucrative long-distance coach and freight traffic, really causing their demise. But before we get to the railways, we're going to have a look at what the canals did to help make Oldham such, and I keep saying industrial powerhouse, I ran out of synonyms, okay? To make it important, to make it dead good, we'll go with that.
Do you know why they're called turnpike roads?
Say that again.
Do you know why they're called turnpike roads?
I did not research that. No.
Well, I don't either, I was asking you.
Oh, I told you no questions. If it's not in this talk. Do you know, I didn't even think about it. They're turnpike roads.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out. Next time I'm dragging the dog past your house,
Okay.
I will knock on and I'm going to tell you.
Right.
Turnpike roads. Thought about that. Yeah. Nobody asked me why canals are called canals, okay? Because I will punch you. I'm sure it'll be from a Latin word. There we go. It's probably from. Moving on. Canals. So Oldham's canal history. This is a story of the triumph of struggle against geography. Oldham's quite hilly, and not somewhere that you really. Oh, wait till I get to trains. I've got a really cool slide that I put together. Oh God, no! I'm saying I think it's cool. You're going to be not impressed, but I think it's cool. And not really somewhere that's hilly. You might not think a canal system would work. Because the town sits on top of the hill, it was incredibly difficult to reach by water. So unlike other industrial towns like Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, Oldham doesn't have a canal system running through its centre, but relied instead on a network of branches that reached towards town from the valleys below. And the importance of the canal system in Oldham can be summed up in one word: coal. So the town, yes, became a little bit famous for cotton, but it was the ability to move huge quantities of coal from the coal field that fueled the industrial explosion. Before the canals, as we've seen, goods, including coal, were moved by horse and wagon, and the turnpike roads, and we'll find out why they're called
I
such.
found out on Google, I know. Google says turnpike roads get their name from the spiked medieval barriers, pikes, used to block roads. When travellers paid their required toll, the gatekeeper would pivot or turn the spiked barrier out of the way to let them pass. Eventually, the toll roads themselves adopted the name.
I was honestly about to say that. I was literally about to say that. Damn you, Magsy. Stealing my thunder. Well, now we know.
Now I know.
So I'm thinking of like a stinger. You know, in those like police chase programs that I never watch, that Marcus watches. And they're like, do the stinger, or whatever it's called, the stringer. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah. Thank you, Mags. That's cool. So yes, the canal network, lost myself. Yes, allowed the coal owners, including our favourites, the Lees, to flood the Manchester market with cheap fuel, which powered the steam engines of Manchester's factories and cotton mills. But of course, it wasn't just Manchester. The canal also brought in the heavy machinery needed to build the multi-storey mills that dominated the Oldham skyline too. And before I get into the nitty-gritty, I'm actually going to detour a little bit on a subject for some reason made my husband very happy: horses. Who knew? When I was going through this, and he just kept asking me all these questions about the horses, which I hadn't included. So I was like, okay, if you find it interesting, I'm going to put it in. So we'll do a little bit about horses here. So the canal barges were pulled by horses from the start, but their use started to decline from the mid-19th century due to the introduction of steam-powered boats, and horses had been retired completely for specific commercial use by the 1960s when motorised boats took over. I mean, I'm sure we've probably all seen when we've been out in the countryside somewhere, a very romantic, horses pulling canals, but that's just for recreational rather than, I'm pretty sure they're not delivering coal and cotton in 2026. Moving from hard roads to water did make life easier for an extent to horses. Horses could pull 50 times more weight on water than on roads. Still wasn't the easiest of lives. Very physically demanding, but the horses received protection from legislation under the 1822 Cruel Treatment of Cattle Act, known as Martin's Law, and after there's a gentleman called Richard Martin who got the act passed. So some boatmen worked their horses for over 16 hours a day without a break, but the better regulated organisations used relay teams, and the horses usually worked 6 hours on, 6 hours off, and they had stabling available overnight along the routes. And thanks to Martin's Law, the wharves were patrolled by enforcers who would investigate cases of overloading and cruelty, and owners would be fined if their horses were forced to move at more than a steady walking pace. So I couldn't find any images specifically of canal horses of Oldham, but these are certainly representative of 19th century horses pulling canals. I think that was in Wales. That's important. But there we are. So, moving away from horses. How did the Oldham Canal network come about? So it began with the Duke of Bridgewater. He arranged for the construction of a canal which completed in 1761 as a means of transporting coal from his mines in Worsley to Manchester for sale. We have the Bridgewater Canal. So this was incredibly successful, and it halved the cost of transporting coal while massively increasing the volume that could be moved at a time. So the Duke's Canal more or less revolutionised things when it came to coal transportation, and clearly, much more importantly, meant much bigger profits for the coal mine owners. So following on from this success, the mine owners in Ashton and Oldham decided they wanted a piece of that action for themselves. So in 1792, they put a proposal to Parliament to establish a new canal to serve Ashton and Oldham. This was approved, and the canal was completed 4 years later in 1796. I'm in awe of the efficiency, and I'm very confident if we put a group of 18th century coal mine owners in charge of HS2, it would have been completed by now. I'm confident. So this canal ran from behind what is now Manchester Piccadilly train station with various arms, one of which went through Daisy Nook, with a branch running towards Park Bridge. So this is a map of the canal. So we can see the Hollingwood branch, the Fairbottom branch. You know, anyone who's, you know, I'm in Daisy Nook all the time and I can never get enough of it. I think it's just absolutely wonderful. And this is again, the Fairbottom branch. You can see Park Bridge. So Bardsley coal mine had its own part of the branch as well. So yeah, where the coal was taken from the Diamond and Victoria pits, where Smokies is now, by tram to the canal, but that was abandoned when the colliery closed down. It had been completely dismantled by 1933. So the canal didn't go into the town because of the previously mentioned steep hills. The link at Ashton connected Oldham to the national canal network and provided a secondary route for raw cotton arriving from Liverpool via the Bridgewater Canal and later the Manchester Ship Canal. And of course, cotton and goods could be sent in the opposite direction, leaving Oldham, being sent out along the canal to Manchester, and thence off you go across the world. And canals were not just valuable transport routes, there was much more to them. They were essential industrial utilities. So Oldham's canal system was the lifeblood of its cotton mills. The steam engines used in the cotton mills required massive, constant amounts of water, and the nearby canals acted as reservoirs, ready-made reservoirs for the mills that were built along their banks. Early textile finishing, bleaching and dyeing, that again required huge volumes of water, which the canal network helped manage and distribute. And the canals also broke the monopoly of the expensive turnpike roads for moving heavy goods. So once the Hollingwood branch of the canal opened, the price of transporting coal dropped by 50%, which meant that the mill owners in Oldham had more profits. They invested this into more and larger factories, leading Oldham to become the cotton capital of the world. However, while canals provided a much needed, faster route to market and enabled the burgeoning of Oldham's industrial revolution, they were hard to maintain due to the steep terrain that they were built on and into. Because the canals were built directly over rich coal seams, the ground beneath them constantly shifted. This caused leaks and meant bridges often had to be raised. By the 1840s, railways had provided a much faster way to move coal up and down Oldham's steep hills, and the canals lost a lot of trade when trains began to dominate transportation of goods in the mid-19th century. In 1842, the Oldham branch of the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway was completed, and by 1845 it had completely usurped the canals. An awful lot of Oldham's canal network has been filled in or built over, including by the M60, which particularly cut through the Hollingwood branch. This section stretched to Park Bridge, and of course some parts, as I said, are preserved in Daisy Nook, just down the road. I'm there all the time, dragging my very reluctant dog. I was there today, dragging her. She's not a walker. Seriously managed to talk to the one dog on earth that doesn't have Marcus. Marcus is very happy with that.
Love it.
And there's also Crime Lake. And I may be about to shatter some political myth, I'm afraid. So Crime Lake, this was formed by a canal construction accident in the late 18th century. In the 1790s, an embankment was built to carry the Hollingwood Branch Canal across a steep side of the valley. There was a culvert underneath, allowing a small brook to pass through, and a portion of the embankment collapsed, blocked the culvert, which caused the stream to flood the valley. It submerged 2 cottages, merged with the canal, and formed what is now known as Crime Lake. And I know we all like to tell other people that it's called Crime Lake because of some murder or some nefarious goings on, but it more than likely comes from an Anglo-Saxon word referring to a small stretch of water. I'm really sorry. But I'm going to keep telling people Crime Lake, oh my God, 1732. Oh, the stabbing. No, the stabbings of 1003. Yeah, you just keep telling people, but you know the truth. Okay. I'll delete that bit off the video. So trains, okay. Why were trains so important? Oh, what did the trains ever do for us? Well, as we've seen, there's a bit of a pattern here. Turnpike roads replaced the old dirt tracks, which meant more goods could be moved, which led to greater profits, reinvestment, development in the town. Canals replaced the importance of the turnpike roads, having exactly the same effect, but on a much larger scale. And that's what happened when the trains chuffed their way into Oldham on an even bigger scale. There we go. So the Manchester and Leeds Railway was a historic British railway company that built the very first rail link between Lancashire and Yorkshire across the Pennine Hills. Officially incorporated in July 1836, the company successfully ran trains between the two major industrial hubs starting in 1841, before merging into the massive Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway in 1847. So it opened its Middleton Junction and Oldham branch on the 31st of March 1842 from its main line, and this was the first railway line to reach Oldham. The initial line connecting the two branches was about 2 miles long, most of which was the Werneth Incline, which was 1 mile long. And this was one of, if not the steepest passenger lines in Britain, with a gradient of 1 to 27 for every mile. What that means is that for every 27 metres you travel forward, the track climbs 1 metre upwards. Now, I mean, I'm a historian, I'm not an engineer. That meant nothing. I read that so many times, I was like, that means nothing to me. So I created a visual. So, this red line shows a 1 to 27 gradient. That's steep. We had trains going up at that angle. That is super, super steep. Nowadays, British mainline railway lines are typically designed with a maximum gradient of 1 to 80, shown in yellow. Oh, come back. But the preferred maximum is much more gentle, about 1 to 285, which is the one shown in green. So this is what we pretty much travel along, occasionally with one of those, but that is what the Werneth Incline was, which, you know, I think that's impressive. That is impressive. And I found a photo online. It's a lady called Kayla Chadwick. She's on various like Oldham Facebook groups, and she posts the most amazing photos. So I asked her if I could pinch this one, and she very kindly said yes. So this is a train entering the tunnel at Werneth Station. I don't know what year. I mean, obviously that's not on the very steep incline. Either that or the photo's taken at a really odd angle. But yes, I thought that was a lovely image. So there was a 1 mile extension built by the construction of 2 tunnels, with a cutting between them to be the only intermediate station at Oldham Central, located just before the second tunnel, and then onto Oldham Mumps. So the line and stations opened on the 1st of November 1847. So this shows the Oldham Loop railway system. And Oldham Central Station was a very busy railway hub, located next to Clegg Street and permanently closed in 1966. The site was largely demolished, however the bridge near Wellington Street remains. So this is a photo of Oldham Central dated to 1905. Just looks so proper, doesn't it? This is Oldham Mumps in 1905. And this is a photo of Hollingwood Station in 1964. This opened in 1881 and closed in 2009. So
This is where all the trams are.
I might be coming out. That's
Oh,
an
sorry.
excellent question.
Last
See,
question.
I like that question because I know the answer. Okay, just for future reference. So I'm approving of that
Yeah,
question.
I like that question.
Yeah, you can ask more. You no. So yes, I will come into that.
Was Werneth Station inside the tunnel? But I can always remember going down steps to get into it.
Werner.
That's coming out at Oldham, well,
Yeah.
Central.
Yeah.
That's coming from Central Station, that's coming into Werner.
Yeah, I remember going
Yeah.
down steps to get on the
Yeah,
train.
you did, yeah, yeah.
Roy was
yeah.
there before they put the trains in. If anyone's going to know,
In fact, the tram turns onto practice, they was more down than Werner
Yeah, it
Station.
used to go through
Yeah,
the
yeah.
tunnel.
Roy probably drove the trains. I mean, he was probably around. He's had every job in Oldham. So, yeah.
Train there, yeah.
Right, Kelly, the first railway to go into Oldham, the centre of Oldham, was the Guybridge and, Guybridge, Denton and, what's it called? Which was from Ashton, Oldham Road, went through Park Bridge. That was the first.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got me on a technicality.
10 arches.
Yeah. So, technically you are correct. Anyone feel free to jump in. But like the first main line, I'm talking about the main line. Wasn't that more of a local train station for local people kind of thing? I'm right, let's move on.
What?
Every talk.
I won't be on the program.
Every talk. I will, you know, I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure this was the first main
There
line.
you go.
Oh, I missed the trick, I should have included 10 arches. Never mind. Right, okay, so where was I up to? I was up to here. So the introduction of the railway to Oldham was crucial into transforming the town into a global cotton manufacturing hub. It overcame steep geographical challenges like the Werner Incline to connect Oldham to Manchester. So important because it drastically reduced the cost and time for importing coal, raw cotton and exporting finished textiles. Although canal transportation clearly made a huge difference to the local economy in the early 19th century, and although, yes, it was quicker and cheaper than pack horses, wagons, turnpike roads, it was still quite expensive and it was still quite slow. But using trains instead for transportation led to much more rapid movement, raw goods of finished products, much more cheaply. And that was all that was needed for Oldham to become Oldham. The railways were essential, not just for factories, but for the expansion of industries by dramatically reducing freight costs and accelerating development during the peak of the Industrial Revolution. And I keep banging on about that, so I'm going to put it into a little bit of context. So the number of cotton mills in Oldham before the canal system opened in the 1790s was 12. The first cotton mill was built in Oldham in 1778 at Lees Hall by William Clegg. 1 year later, 1779, 12 mills in total had been built. So we're making progress, but not much. More than 200 cotton mills opened in Oldham following the arrival of the canal system. And like I've said, many were built specifically along the banks, or that free access to water that was needed. By 1838, Oldham had 213 cotton factories, surpassing Manchester as the leading centre for cotton spinning. And the construction of mills surged in multiple waves throughout the 19th century, and the canal system clearly implemented explosive growth. But after the trains arrived in 1842, Oldham really came into its own, and over 300 more mills were built from this point, and the rest, as they say, is history. Sadly, the decline of the trains in Oldham echoed the decline of the cotton industry. Several train stations closed in the 50s and 60s, such as Oldham Central and Royton in April 1966. Oldham Clegg Street closed in May 1959 and Glodick Road in May 1955. In 1966, there were around 65 to 70 cotton mills still in production in Oldham, and the last rail stations in Oldham closed in October 2009 when Oldham Mumps and Oldham Werner shut their doors. The last cotton to spin and produce cotton in Oldham was
Chelsea Mill. Elmo, was it?
kind of both. They both claim it. So Elk Mill which ceased operations at the end of 1988. That was the last mill to spin and produce cotton, and it's seen as the last true traditional spinner. But Chadderton Mill continued to finish cotton spinning within the Oldham Council boundaries until it ceased production in 2000. So I don't know enough technicalities to know what the difference is. They both say cotton, they both say spinning. So, I mean, maybe Chadderton does win that one, but Elk Mill very famously says it was them. So I think you're both great. So the closure of Oldham Monts and Oldham Werneth marked the end of the historic Oldham Loop line, which was dismantled and mostly converted into the modern Manchester Metrolink tram system, which I'll be coming on to shortly. Oh, which I'm coming on to now. And so the final part of tonight's talk, all about the tram system. So I'm not claiming our modern tram system contributed to 19th century industrial growth. But since I'm discussing Oldham's transportation, I thought it would be rude to leave it out. But I'm not actually talking really about the modern tram lines that we have. Oldham's first tramway was authorised in 1878 and officially opened on September the 16th, 1880. It was a horse-drawn system that ran from Hollingwood to Waterhead via the town centre. And this is a 1900 image of one of the horse-drawn trams. So again, echoing something I said earlier, so when I finish my talks, I always read them to Marcus. He's thrilled, but I just need to make sure it's not like the most boring thing anyone's ever written. And when I was reading it through to him, again, this is the bit, the horses, that he found so fascinating. He enjoyed it so much he actually woke up. He was like, oh yeah, I like that bit. So he asked a lot of questions that I didn't have the answers to. So we're all animal lovers. I went off to rectify that. So we've got a bit of a Q&A that he put to me. So first of all, could I add more pictures of horses? Yes. There we go. Horse tram, horse tram, horse tram. And these are all Oldham. Yeah, having a jolly time. Okay, maybe Manchester, but I think they're brilliant. Were the horses well looked after? This was so interesting. So there were no universal laws initially. 19th century operators established strict daily guidelines to protect their financial investments. It will come as no surprise that the tram companies were largely driven by economics rather than animal cruelty laws. So the 1822 Martins Act that I've referenced outlawed wanton cruelty and the beating of horses. It allowed for fines and paved the way for the establishment of the Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, now the RSPCA. That was formed in 1824. And because horses represented 55% of a tram company's operating costs, keeping the horses healthy was a major financial priority, so they would have been treated reasonably well. So, how long would a horse be at work each day pulling trams? So horses typically work just 4 to 5 hours a day. They would pull trams for a distance of about 12 to 15 miles. So because of this, it took a stud of up to 12 horses to keep a single tram running for a 12-hour shift. So the specific operational limits and practices during the period of horse-drawn trams in Oldham included strict shift limits. And the horses would usually complete 1 or 2 return journeys before returning to stables for food and rest. And there was also the 2-hour rule in towns such as Oldham with steep inclines, where companies stationed specialised trace horses at the bottom of hills, and they were used exclusively to assist trams up the steep sections, meaning the regular tram horses were not going to be overworked. I'm not imagining like really hench horses. I've got this one. What's an Oldham horse? So how many horses did Oldham have pulling trams? So when we had horse-drawn trams in Oldham, how many horses do you think were in the stud?
About 30?
30?
No, couple of hundred.
Couple of hundred. Okay, 30, couple of hundred. 5,244.
How many?
5,244 at its peak. Yeah? So I mentioned that horses represented, it was about 55% of a tram company's operating cost, and this is why. So I couldn't find specific account information relating to Oldham, so I just kind of got general 19th century figures for horse-drawn trams. Okay, the weekly cost of feeding, stabling and caring for one tram horse ranged from 10 to 15 shillings. So if the Manchester Carriage and Tramways Company spent an average of 12.5 shillings per horse per week, that stud of 5,244 horses would cost £3,277 a week in the 19th century. That's about £14,000 a month. I mean, that's a lot of money now. Because I know you guys, you always want to know, how much is that worth now, Kelly? That would be the equivalent, a monthly cost of £2.3 million today.
Do you know how much the tram drivers were paid?
He only asked about the horses, he didn't care about humans. It's like, should I find out about the humans? Don't care. I want to know about the horses. What were they fed? What were they called? Where did they live? You know?
Kelly, ban all people called Steve.
Yes, that's true. I'm going to get a sign made. That's an excellent question, actually. And I was so fixated on animals, I didn't think about, well, no one think about the tram drivers. Okay.
Just a thought, why don't you run it by Steve before, rather than asking me all the time? What brown to is?
Oh, yeah, Wendy's going to be like, no. she'll throw her darts at me. I'm like, I've come to review this month's talk. No, thank you, slam score, lost it. Exit by the back door. Nice try. I will find out. And next time I'm dragging my dog past your house, I'll knock on. That's a great question. Okay, so yes, if you're spending the equivalent of £2.3 million a month on your horses, you're going to be inclined to treat them well. Okay, you know, like I said, financial necessity, not because they loved Trooper and, I don't know, Derek. I want to have a horse called Derek. But you don't want them dropping dead, you know. So how long would a horse work as a tram horse? So because of the heavy strain on the hard paved streets, a tram horse had an average working life of 4 years before it was retired or sold off for lighter labour, or I imagine the farm. I had to live at the farm. But it was about 4 years that an individual horse would work. Or something about people, about how many people a horse-drawn tram could carry. So they typically carry between 40 and 60 passengers. On a double-decker, you'd have 20 or so on the lower deck, you know, 20, 30, whatever, on the upper deck. And this was inside, you know, many would have clung to the outsides, adding to the overall numbers. So Hollingwood was the major terminus for the Manchester Carriage and Tramways Company, which ran the large network of horse-drawn trams from Manchester out to Hollingwood. And because these tramways required the massive fleet of horses, local hubs like the one near the terminus at Hollingwood housed extensive stables to feed, rest and care for the animals. And should you find yourself on Stable Street or Railway Road in Hollingwood in the near future, you are on the roads where these horses lived. Love it.
So, if you've got millions on the horses,
Yeah,
so much on the drivers,
yeah.
what the fares?
Half a bob. I don't know. That, again, excellent question.
Thank you.
Genuinely. Okay. Just tell me you're not called Steve. No. It's just because, you know, we've got a game going. Okay, so how much the tram drivers were paid and what the average fare was. Why did I think that? I put what it cost on the turnpike roads. Brilliant, brilliant question. Okay, thank you, I will find out. Fab. Yes, so Stable Street, Railway Road, Hollingwood, Bosch. So, authorised by the 1878 Oldham Borough Tramways Order, the original tram line was operated, as I said, by the Manchester Carriage and Tramways Company. It became an electric line in 1900, so this is a tram, an electric one at Hollandwood Terminus in about 1935. I've definitely not got that wrong, it does say Terminus Hollandwood. So the electric trams were themselves phased out in favour of the motor and trolley buses. So cute. And the last traditional tram ran in 1946, was then fully replaced with buses. So the tram system returned to Oldham in 2012, arriving at Oldham Months with a new direct street running route through the Oldham Town Centre, opening on January 27, 2014. So this marked the return of the tram to the first time since the original network was retired in 1946. And it happened in two major phases. June 2012, you had the Oldham and Rochdale line through the converted Oldham Loop rail line to Oldham Months. Later that year, extended through Derbyshire and Crompton, reaching Rochdale. And then you had the second phase in 2014, with trams providing that public service directly through Oldham for the first time since 1946, with a new loop through the heart of the town. But thankfully for Marcus, no horses are used at this time. And that is it. Thank you so much for coming. Oh, I hope you enjoyed. I loved researching and writing that one. So if you didn't like it, shh. Okay, don't tell me, don't make me cry. But you know, in all seriousness, some really great questions, and I will add those on, and I'll put some details, you know, onto the thing where I've put it on the Facebook things, just with an update. But I haven't completely decided on next month's talk. I've been doing quite a bit of work actually on the Avro at Chadderton. And all the planes and whatnot, and the importance of the work during the war, which I find really interesting. I'm not sure I can stretch that to a full talk though, so I'm still toying with ideas, but I'm always open. If anybody has any suggestions, you just let me know, and I will write a talk about it. But I will let you know in due course, and there will definitely be one on the first Thursday in August, so be there.
And you must book.
Square. Yeah.
You must book, because you see we're full, and there were 4 people at Borley. So
Yeah.
you need to book.
I'm just Oasis at Heaton Park, quite frankly. You know, what can I say? But cheaper and prettier. So, yes, we're all good, thank you.
Well done.
Yeah, thank you.